Hello and welcome to Gutshot, home of the hottest takes for Magic the Gathering. I'm Will, and joining me as always is my boy, Frederick.
What is up, everybody? It is his boy, Frederick. Welcome to Gutshot, the only modal dual-faced Magic the Gathering podcast.
Oh, okay. I think there's a lot of room to play around in this space. So the two faces of the card. Am I one, and then you are kind of like a Valky Tybalt situation, or are we trying to do something else?
We are one, and my professor's pre-recorded lectures that he spends half of complaining about his mother-in-law are the other side.
Oh yeah. No. Oh, I remember telling you the story over text, but I had a similar situation where one of my professors kept making really off-color jokes about how much he hated his ex-wife, which didn't land very well in a room of 18-year-olds who have no idea what having an ex-wife is like.
Only we fellas get it.
Yeah, it's only for the fellows. Well, okay. Well, I call dibs on the good side, or I call dibs on the side that you can cascade into, even though kind of common sense says you probably shouldn't be able to cast into it, and it warps the format. You can be the brain maggot.
Yeah, I that's what my ex-wife calls me.
Oh.
Today we are going to be talking about how to improve white. Magic players love to complain. Of course, there's been sort of a cycle of one color being the best. At the beginning of the game, that was blue, but that was a little excusable because, Richard Garfield was inventing the trading card game, and he had no real way of knowing that 3 cards was not the same thing as gaining 3 life. And then as things have gone on, people complained about green being not powerful enough, and now I would say green has probably been the most powerful color in Standard for a while. But white has lagged behind for quite a bit, both in Commander, just because the things it does are not as relevant in like a multiplayer 40 life format, but also in Standard. So we're here to think about other effects that have maybe been used in white but not fleshed out that could help bring the color back to a forefront, give it a decent space of the game.
Yeah, lots of people have been complaining about the power level and the mechanical space of white for a while, and we on this podcast we really want to take a more positive approach on this. So I at least am not going to harp too much on the mistakes that Wizards of the Coast has made in the past. We want to look forward. We want to be excited about what white could possibly do in the future. So I at least for myself, I'm going to be very excited about all of these great ideas that we've come up with for white to regain its past glory as a color that has powerful cards and its own unique mechanical space.
Am I? And I think it'll be really interesting to go over these sort of little designs that we've made and talk about how we think these mechanics should sort of return to being at the forefront with white.
Yes,
so with that said, do you want to just jump right into it?
Yeah, let's go into it. And I think that you're starting us off with a something that it feels kind of old, but it didn't really actually happen all that long ago. Tell us about your first idea, which is investigate.
Yeah, so investigate was a mechanic in Shadows over Innistrad, as well as Eldritch Moon, and it came in Bant in that set. Those are the colors that could do it, but it was mostly blue. But you might remember this sort of iconic card, Thraben Inspector, who is a 1-mana 1/2 that investigated when it came in. And what Investigate does is you create a clue token. Clues are artifacts that you can pay 2, tap, sacrifice the clue, draw a card. So it had this sort of investigative flavor. You would get a lead that you would follow toward gaining more knowledge, drawing a card. And I think that this is a great thing to do with white. I think that white needs card draw, and this is a fair way to do it. You're making them sort of wait for it, but you're allowing them to plan for it in advance, which is very white. I think that you just need to remain conscious that you're not just using clues as an efficient source of card draw, because then they will fold into the blue-white control decks that are doing pretty well, and those don't feel like they give white its own sort of identity. You're just augmenting the decks that already control. So with that in mind, I've got 2 clue cards, 2 investigate cards that I think are pretty good, that one of which is geared toward constructed and the other one which is geared toward limited. So I'll hit you with my first one first. This is Armed with the Truth. It's a rare 1 white enchantment. When Armed with the Truth enters the battlefield, investigate. Clues you control are equipments with equip 1, and equipped creature gets +1/+1.
Oh, okay.
So this is sort of a short sword variant. Of course, it's worth noting that it stacks. If you play multiple Armed with the Truth, they have multiple instances of equipped creature gets +1/+1. That is intentional.
Based.
But but I think this sort of allows the clues to be used in a more aggressive way, especially in limited and maybe also in constructed. But then if all of your creatures are dead, these clues can sort of be sacked to draw cards. But also, the more clues you get, the more equipments you have, the more short swords you have to attach to your creatures. Will, how do you feel about this design?
Yeah, so clues were really well designed or really well received when they first came out. I remember people thinking that when these cards were first spoiled, that they looked really clunky, but it turns out that they played very well and they were well received by the player base. Do you remember that as well?
That seemed like it. A lot of people liked playing with them, especially in limited. A lot of people were saying they could be evergreen. I think they're a little bit too flavored to specific planes to be evergreen, but I do remember them being very well received by players, and they have a high chance of coming back, from what I understand.
Yeah, Wizards is making all sorts of different tokens like that. Like, we got the treasure token, the gold token. I think there's even another one. Oh, machine cell. There's like one that Tezzeret
Oh, the
makes.
Tezzeret, yeah.
Yeah, like they could easily make another clue that's more generic. If they feel that the clues are technically not appropriate for other planes. I really like this because equip one for +1/+1 is like it's not nothing, but it is kind of limited power level equipment. It's no Embercleave, right? So I think that that's appropriate, attaching it to basically what is a 1 mana draw spell, where you can kind of bank that mana on a different turn. So I actually really like this. I think this is a very appropriate power level for standard. So yeah, I definitely think that this is a safe way for Magic to experiment with ways to give card draw to white.
Yeah, and I think clues are the most elegant solution. And then I got one more clue card that I made. I just called it Thorough Examiner, Human Advisor, 3 and double white for a 3/5. When it enters the battlefield, investigate twice, and it has vigilance. So this is supposed to be just one of the best white uncommons in a limited format. You're going to investigate twice, so maybe next turn you can draw a couple cards, and it's a 3/5 vigilance for 5, which is not an excellent body, but you're getting that card draw.
Yeah, the 3/5 for 5 is a body that white gets, and it's usually pretty low tier on the cards that you want to draw, right? Or cards that you want to pick out of the pack, right? They usually have some sort of ability attached to it. Like I'm thinking of the Mutt from oh, what's that reason set? The one I believe it's from Eldraine, where it comes in, destroys an artifact or enchantment. Do you know what card I'm talking about?
Oh, that was the core set, but yeah,
Oh, okay, sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that card where it's like, this is a body that white gets at 5 mana, but is like clearly doesn't get there. But hey, if you put draw 2 cards on it, in a way that kind of banks them for a future turn, yeah, that takes this from a lower pick to probably a pretty high pick. So I think this is a great way to experiment with that type of card in limited.
Yeah, okay, and that's what I was kind of going for. I think clues would be, or like shards that we saw on Nico, would be a very good way for white to go in terms of card draw. So hopefully they're planning something like that. Mark Rosewater has said he's trying to fix white, but he's been saying that for years. And we got Mankara the Diplomat. So we're gonna move into. You have strong opinions about white with Scry. Tell me about those.
Oh, yeah. So first off, I want to acknowledge that I lifted this idea from Reddit. So all credit to anyone before today that was talking about white being primary in Scry on Reddit. But Wizards has said over and over again, and it's apparent in their design, that they don't think that white should have pure card draw. For whatever reason, however you feel about that, that's currently how Wizards feels about it. And I can agree. And let's keep in mind that a lot of the conversation about whether the power level of white is appropriate or not comes from Commander, where there is an expectation that every color has your access to the two pillars of that format, like insane card draw and ability to ramp their mana in broken ways. I actually kind of I could be swayed, but right now I'm kind of on the same idea of Wizards of the Coast, that it's slightly if they want the color pie to be as strong as possible, that makes sense that white would get its card advantage from other places other than just pure card draw. So I would like to see Wizards explore ways to give them more virtual card advantage, and I think that white being primary and Scry would be a great way to explore that.
I think I agree. Will you walk us through this first card you've designed?
Yeah. I do real quick. Scry right now is primary in blue, and that makes sense. Like a lot of things are in blue because it makes sense, or it's like thematic to the flavor. I think in the same way that you could argue that white shouldn't get pure card draw, you can also argue that blue shouldn't also be the best at scrying in addition to drawing. That it being all of that being in blue plus everything else that blue gets is a little inappropriate. So putting Scry in white will give them potent manipulation without drawing, and I think that I've come up with two cards here that just could exemplify what white could do with Scry. So for this first card, as I've called Scrying Beats, this is another, like your card, variation on a limited type. It's 2 mana 3/1 that white often gets in its sets. And then when it enters the battlefield, Scry 2. So it's an appropriate white creature that also gives you that almost virtual card advantage when it comes into play. And I've called it Scrying Beats.
I think this is very strong. Probably would be one of the best uncommons in most limited formats. Like the Oracle, but you get to trade it with something bigger. I thought it was broken, but then I remembered the thing that crews vehicles that scries when it comes in red white in that Kaladesh set, and I was like, yeah, this is probably fine. That card was uncommon. I like this a lot. I would love to play with as many copies of these as I can in any white limited deck. Just scrying 2 and then trading this with something seems great. And I think is a very appropriate way to allow white some virtual card advantage in formats like limited.
There are a lot of ways. Scry is very versatile, and we've seen that ever since it came out in 5th Dawn. There's so many ways that you can tweak, like so many knobs that you can tweak, because we already think of Scry as something you just tack on to kind of make up that extra mana cost, kind of like when you're trading and you have to throw in a couple of like a dollar rare or a couple of like bulk rares to bulk up the price a little bit. There's a lot of room for design tweaks to Scry. And then with my second card here, this is kind of I was thinking if white could just get a pure Scry effect, and I think that this is appropriate. Coding Oracles as white. I'm thinking of Omen Speaker here. I understand why Oracles would be flavored as blue. Like, it kind of makes sense, but we could also just say that they're white, and that also makes sense. So Coding Oracles as white instant for 2 mana, just Scry 4. Do you okay, I'm not gonna say that I'm a good card designer, but Frederick, let me know, did I just break a format here?
I don't know if this would be good, but I think it's interesting in that way. This doesn't replace itself. I would liken this to Faithless Looting. Like you're getting some card advantage, but you're going down one card. And I think it could be good. I can't think of any formats you'd break with this. I might see play in some really grindy control decks. But I mean, they print plenty of cards that are obviously good in really grindy control decks. I think it's an interesting card. We've never gotten a card that just scries. So I'm curious how strong a card that just scries would have to be in order to see play.
Yeah, that's true. That's something we would really need to see beforehand, before knowing like what the true power level of this card is. But this is where I would want to start for putting Scry into white. I think that this is an appropriate power level, to test those waters. So I think this
I
is an
agree.
interesting idea.
Yeah, I think maybe either like making it Scry 5 or bumping it down to 1 mana is probably too strong. Make him gain 2 life. That's a white thing. You
This
white players like that, right?
yeah, that's true. We have to keep in mind that all of this could have life gain attached to it and make it very potent. But before we move on to your next point, I just want to make a quick sub point, and I hope that this doesn't turn into like a huge thing. But like I mentioned, lots of people uh, want white to have card draw specifically for the commander format. I am actually 100% for that. As long as that card draw is specifically tied to the format through your commander, through the command zone. Like, if with my design here, if this card just said just draw 3 cards, I would totally be into it. So I've designed leading from the front, 4 mana sorcery. It's
Yeah,
harmonized for white. You may only cast leading from the front if your commander's in play, and draw 3 cards. So it's
gain two
harmonized. Yes, and gain 2 life, of course. I'm totally fine with this, and I don't think that this breaks like Wizards' idea that like white should not have pure card draw in their normal formats. I don't think that this card's actually very good, but would you want to see a card like this specifically for Commander?
I think it would be nice to satiate casual commander players. Like, obviously, this is not going to be good enough to see play in CEDH, which is what I would want to avoid making something good enough to see play in CEDH, because the color pie still kind of matters in that format. But in commander, like, not everyone who plays commander is obligated to be a game designer, and so I think it's totally fine for this to exist, or something like draw a card for each opponent you have.
Oh yeah.
Just something, yeah, something commander matters. I think those are kind of the two obvious directions you can take it in, is like if your commander's in play, or like commander, like opponents matter. But yeah, I think this is totally something that's fine to print. It would make all of the Reddit dudes really angry. All of the color pie warriors,
Mhm.
and that's a plus. Makes me happy. So yeah, I think this is a fine design. You just slip these in a commander deck.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I actually really like your idea. I haven't thought of this of draw cards equal to the number of your opponents, which in a normal game of Commander would still just be this card. See, you're much better at this than me. But I just wanted to make this point real quick, and I am ready to move on to your next idea, which I think a lot of people are kind of also harping on.
Yeah, I am not unique in this, but white used to get a lot of tax counter spells. Think like Mana Tithe. Something like Mana Leak might have been printed in white if they had kept with that. So I've got a couple of taxing counter spells that counter a spell unless its controller pays a certain amount of mana. So this first one is Disorient. It's 1 and a white for an instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X, where X is the number of tapped non-basic lands they control. So this is sort of a non-basic land punisher, like Price of Poggers,
Yeah.
one of the cards we talked about last week. I like those. I think that they can print more powerful non-basic lands if more powerful non-basic land counters are casually included. I like the way that Pokemon balances that around their special energy, where special energy are super easy to remove. There are cards that are modal that are played anyway that remove them, but like they're a lot more powerful than like non-basic lands in Magic are, and I like that design. But yeah, like it's a non-basic land punisher, and I think white having taxing counter spells and blue having more hard counter spells is a really appropriate place for those colors to be. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, yeah. It makes a lot of sense. We know that one of the things that white is supposed to be able to do, like their bread and butter mechanic, is like enforcing rules, taxing, making your opponent pay extra mana when they try to do stuff. That's the white death and taxes. That's their whole thing.
Mm.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. White is marked as being what they say tetrary. I think that's how you say that.
Tertiary?
Yeah, tertiary. Thank you. White is, or I'm sorry, blue is obviously primary and counter spells, and white is tertiary. So that means that they can get counter spells, but they do not, like, at all. I mean, they're
Yeah,
like the last one I think was just Mana Tithe, unless there's like a really weird one that I'm not thinking of.
it was. Well, in terms of mono white counter spells, obviously we get like Dovin's Veto and stuff. But
Yeah, I don't think that I know what you mean.
right.
Yes, this makes so much sense. There's not a real good reason that counterspell or counters should only exist in one specific color. And, they should move on, and we already know of a perfect way for that type of card to be thematic in this color. Yeah, so I just think it's a no-brainer. I think it's a matter of when, not if, because the community is so harping on this so much that I do think it is something we're going to see a bit more of. Now, to your design specifically, I think this is really smart. Number of tap non-basic lands. I think that's a really smart way to do it, and it's it plays around in a space that I think could use a little bit more, something that stronger against all these non basic lands that we're getting. So I think this is a great design. I really like where your head is with this.
Okay, I have made one more tax counter spell that feels white as an example. So this is regrouped rebuff X and double white for an instant with convoke counter target spell unless its controller pays X. So this is just a nice little way to protect your creatures from a board wipe, maybe, or just like not attack with your creatures so you can counter whatever big spell they're going to play on their turn, while still getting to play creatures on your turn, which is something white very much wants to do.
Oh yeah, convoke is a great idea with this. Yeah, this is a great design here, and if white gets these types of abilities, using white's other advantages to it, like convoke. This is great. I actually would expect to just see this card at some point. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head here. We could also see other things where it's like, unless they pay X, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn, we might see something like that. But yeah, we could theme these to white, in various ways, and it doesn't just have to be quench or mana leak. Although I think quench in white would be appropriate.
Which one is quench again?
Quench it's a mana leak, except they have to pay 2 instead of 3.
Oh yeah, slurp. Yeah,
Yeah.
the satisfying. I think that might be. Yeah, I would want to lean away from cards that would just slot into blue-white control decks, but I think they probably will eventually do that. Yeah.
It's smart. You're right. It's smart to ease into this and do more interesting designs like this one before just doing the Mana Leak reprint. To kind of see where this stuff can kind of settle in and how it plays once players get these cards into your hand. So yeah, you're probably right there. I would want to see this card, your Convoke counterspell, before White Quench.
Yeah. Do you think we might get White Quench in that Time Spiral spiritual successor set we're supposedly getting later?
I don't know. I haven't been following that close enough to say. I mean, it would be a big deal, and everyone would be really happy if that happened. But who knows? Wizards will most likely not give people what they want.
True. So speaking of giving people what they want, Balance is a classic card, and you have some updated takes on that.
Oh yeah. Okay, all right. So just so we're clear, balance is too good. We cannot have balance in normal modern design Magic. But balance is a cool thing. It's a unique effect that is solely in white. It's one of those things we know this is a white card, and it does not make sense anywhere else. Wizards has shied away from wanting balance to be a part of their game, other than the OG balance in old formats. It has proven itself to be very good. However, and I think another reason why they kind of shied away from balance is that in their market research, they've probably found out that newer players, people who aren't entrenched Magic players like Fred and I are, do find balance effects to be very unfun. It's the same as having your huge spell just counterspelled for 2 mana, and then you're dead. You don't get to do anything. I wouldn't be surprised if they found out that balance effects are not actually that fun for new players.
Yeah.
However, I think that balance effects can be narrowed and or tweaked, or both can be narrowed and tweaked to the point where they can be at a standard power level that is appropriate with what they're printing these days. So I am keeping in mind that there has been power creep recently. We live in the world of Uro. We literally just got a 3 mana Wrath. So this is going to exist in that world. So I've created what I think would be the new balance, and this might be too good, but this is the Great Equalizer. Is a 4 mana sorcery. So again, balance is 2 mana. That's part of why it's such a bonkers card. So let's up this to 4 mana. 4 mana sorcery. Choose a permanent type. So it's not going to be your hands, land, and creatures. You're choosing a permanent type. Each opponent chooses a number of that permanent type they control equal to the number controlled by you, then sacrifices the rest. So this card, again, is only going to do something if your opponents are ahead of you on something. If you're playing a low creature deck and your opponent is loading up on creatures, this is just a 4 mana Wrath. If your opponent is ramping up, this is going to destroy some lands, but you have to get up to 4. They can't go below 4 lands. I feel like that's the point where they can continue to play the game. It doesn't shut them out of the game if they have to go all the way down to the prerequisite 4 mana for you to cast this. And then it also hits. And then it also hits like Planeswalkers if you need it to, but only one of those at a time. It's possible that this breaks a format, but how do you feel about this card?
Oh, I love this. I think there's a lot of really neat corner cases with this card, and I love cards with neat corner cases. If you're playing against Affinity and you're not playing any artifacts, this just wipes all their artifacts. That's pretty sweet. When they finally release Kifkin's Spirit Guide, you can cast this without any lands. I think this is a really neat card. I don't think it's too broken. I think they've been edging closer to decent balanced type effects, like we got Gideon's Oopsie Whoopsie or whatever in Origins. I don't remember what the card was called, but it was kind of a balance. We got Calamitous Gear Hulk in Kaladesh. We keep getting effects like that, but I think this pushes it into playability without making it broken. I think this is a really nice design.
Yeah, I actually am really in love with the 4 mana, the 4 CMC here. Like you said, if your opponent's playing an Affinity deck and you're not playing any artifacts, this comes down, wipes their board. It's Shatterstorm, and that's a perfectly existing card and one that is appropriately costed for 4 mana. So I think this proves that like balance effects can be tweaked in a way to where they can exist.
That Shatterstorm, like with other modes, is really, really powerful. Sometimes you just want to break stuff.
Hope I'm like a Shatterstorm. What?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have another one. I feel this one, the wording on this card is not right. Just so everyone knows, you would have to word this in a different way. But the idea is there. I think everybody can understand what this is trying to do. But I have another type of balance effect, and I was inspired with this one. I was inspired by Narset, Parter of Veils, which is another card that it's good, and I can see why it's blue. But I think that I think that effect should be white, and I think that would make sense to be another way that Magic could reprint a balance effect. So this is Hall Monitoring, this is a 4 mana enchantment. When Hall Monitoring enters the battlefield, choose an opponent. If they have more cards in hand than you, draw cards equal to the difference. So if Wizards wanted white to draw cards, this could be a way they do that. I do think this would be a mythic. This would be like a rare card. So you'll draw cards equal to the difference, and then once it's in play, players cannot draw more than 1 card per turn. So Yeah, so this is a take on the balance effect. It's a way to kind of put Narset into white, which I think is appropriate,
Yeah.
and it also ties into the rule setting that that white does, because at the end of the day, this is just evening out the game. And there
Hmm.
are ways to break it, and I think that that's appropriate. But you know, I think this is an interesting design that kind of plays in a space that white should have.
I completely agree. I think this is a really awesome design. I think it's very commander fun too. I think a lot of people are going to want to. You know, you're more likely to have an opponent with a lot of cards in hand in commander because you have three opponents. So you know, this plays really well there. I do like the rule setting. I think this feels very white. It's sort of equalizing things and then setting a rule. I think this is a balanced card. It's probably not going to be like too busted. And you know, you could top end your sort of more low to the ground mid range deck with this. Yeah, I like this card a lot. I think it's really neat.
Yeah, yeah. I actually am really proud of my two balance cards. I think I don't have a lot of hope that Wizards would explore this space, but if they wanted to, I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, I don't think this card is feels bad in the way that like balance was though. I think this is just kind of like you know I'm losing in a way that's pretty concrete. That like new players are pretty easy to. It's pretty easy to tell when you're a new player that having more cards in your hand is good.
Mhm.
So like I'm losing in a concrete way and I'm coming back from that. So it's going to be less of a feels bad card
Uh,
than like a balance might be.
yeah, for sure. Like this it just draws you a card. It just draws you cards. This doesn't this does not end the game. It's not a Ugin or something like that. But
Right.
yeah, okay. So I think that you wanted to talk about possibilities for good planeswalkers in white. So what are you thinking of?
Yeah. So blue has Jace the Mind Sculptor and a couple others. Black has several good Lilianas. Red has, you know, Chandra Torch of Defiance as well as 6 mana Chandra. Uh, and then green has a couple good Garuks and several good Nissas. The closest white has come to having like a really good planeswalker would be Gideon Ally of Zendikar, which don't get me wrong is a great card, but it's no Jace the Mind Sculptor. So Cardsmith would only let me put 3 abilities on a planeswalker, but just assume this also has an ultimate.
Okay.
Teo Verata, they you know that's the dude who was in War of the Spark. 2 and double white for a legendary planeswalker, Teo. 5 starting loyalty, +1 investigate. For those who don't remember, that's make a clue. 0, create a O2 white wall creature token. You gain 2 life. And for -2, put a lifelink counter, a vigilance counter, a first strike counter, and a +1/+1 counter on target creature.
Oh, okay.
So this is supposed to be a little bit pushed in the vein of like a Jace the Mind Sculptor or something. It can kind of protect itself with the walls. It can generate a little card advantage with Investigate. And then that -2 is just for if your opponent's tapped out, you don't think they have a lot of removal, you can just kind of permanently augment one of your creatures, which is something I think White should also be good at. How do you feel about this?
Do you want it to be because it doesn't say this on here, but I would assume that the white wall creature tokens would have defender. Do you want
No,
Okay.
I removed that. The ones from the War of the Spark Teo don't either, and the purpose is so you can give them +1/+1 counters and swing with them.
Oh, okay. I figured that's what you were trying to do. I'd probably. This is way too nitpicky. I'm sorry, man. You might want to call them something other than walls. You know, to kind of get that idea over. Maybe you could do like a 0/2 white illusion token or something like that.
Okay.
Just as
Yeah,
a thematics. It is not appropriate for me to be criticizing that. I'm sorry.
no, it is. I just formatted it the way that they formatted the Teo in War of the Spark.
Yeah, just so we're clear, my hall monitoring card literally does not work because once it comes into play, you can't draw. So anyway,
So powerful.
yes. I actually really like this. I think a +1 investigate is a really great way to explore your idea of adding more investigate. If it's on a +1, you know that you're banking those. Yeah, that really does a lot to help white with its card draw, and then being able to defend itself with the 0 with the walls, and then you know you're probably going to be playing other creatures, so the -2 makes a lot of sense on putting it on your other creatures. And now that we have the ability counters, yeah, that really does push this up to another level. The card that I'm trying to compare this to is 4-mana Gideon, ally of Zendikar from Battle for Zendikar block, which I think we all know is a great card. I'm wondering if this would be on the same power level as that. And I think it would, just from first glance, it seems like it would be a little weaker than that. But this would definitely be a role player in the standard, much more than the current Elspeth, I'd have to say.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. White Planeswalkers have been a disappointment for quite a while, pretty much since getting out of Zendikar. So I want to kind of correct that, especially when other colors get such good ones. And white is supposed to be the color of Planeswalkers. They can search for them. There's that shitty Planeswalker Coco, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they could bring them back from the graveyard.
That's true. They can do that too.
Yeah, I think this is a great card. There are definitely ways that white could push its planeswalkers. Like Elspeth was, unfortunately, it was cool and thematic, but ultimately a miss because it just wasn't powerful enough. And we know what like a powerful white planeswalker looks like. We have Gideon. We have other ones that we could look at. Original Elspeth, the 4-mana one. There's a good blueprint for what white planeswalkers need, and it's been a long time. I mean, Battle for Zendikar was like what, 2015. We have room to come up with something like this. So I think this is a good design in that vein.
Yeah, every other color has gotten a good planeswalker since I was in high school. White has not.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you've got a cool color shift for us here, and it's to lead us into a discussion about white and indestructible. Tell us about team building exercise.
Oh, yeah. So Wizards has already started moving in this direction. So this is not something that they have not even talked about. Like we've seen good cards that use Indestructible recently, and those cards usually do end up being pretty good. Adano Vanguard from Ixalan, where you can pay 4 life to give it indestructible over and over again. I'm thinking of the more recent card, who I am really kicking myself I didn't write down the name of, but it's the one from M21 where you discard a card and then it gets indestructible. It's like a seasoned Hollow Blade.
Yeah, seasoned Hollow Blade.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and those have proven to be very good cards. If we're trying to think of ways to differentiate white's creatures from green, I think we can all agree that it's appropriate that green creatures are, the biggest, the most efficient on raw power and toughness. And the idea is that white is supposed to be, they also have, they're also creature based, but their creatures are just more sturdy. They get more abilities. They first strike. They get vigilance, more lifelink protection. I think that's appropriate to explore more ways to use indestructible on white creatures to give them more of a thematic thread that also differentiates them from the bulk of green creatures. So the first one actually isn't a creature. It's a card that I think probably should have been in white the entire time, but this is team building exercise. It's a 2-mana instant. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This is just heroic intervention, but tweaked in a little bit that makes a bit more sense for white. This ability already exists in white, so this is not. We know this isn't a color pride break, but we need a card like this at a pushed cost to to kind of solidify that this effect is both white and deserves to be white. And I think that this is a very good card.
Yeah, I think I agree. I would like to see this in. I don't know. I always felt like that spell could be uncommon for limited purposes.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me. I like this. I think it eventually needs to happen. I don't know. I know hexproof is awkward in white. So indestructible and protection from any color, maybe. But I guess that would make your creatures unblockable. So never mind. Yeah, I think hexproof and indestructible is the only sensible way to print this. But yeah, I like it. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, this I think this ought to just be in white. Like make it clear the heroic intervention. Like it's fine that green gets it, but like this is a white card. Wizards can do some work to
Yeah.
solidify that. But I actually have some actual creatures that I think could be variations on the giving themselves indestructible theme that could differentiate them from green. I've got Capped Battler here, 2 mana, double white. It's a 0/0, but it's one of those creatures that enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it. So it's a bit of a watch wolf. But at any time, you can remove a +1/+1 counter from Capped Battler to give it indestructible until end of turn. So it's not over and over again like a Dano Vanguard would be. It's very diminishing returns here, but I think that that's appropriate for a limited power level. It's above rate until you use it. Once the first time you use it, it just becomes normal rate, and then it just goes down from there. What do you think of this idea?
Like it, I think on most modern cards, they're saying it gains indestructible till end of turn and then tap it.
Yeah, I thought about that.
Yeah, well, I think it's so if they bolt it before your combat, you can't attack with it. But yeah, I like this design. I think it's pretty elegant. It'd probably be a really good uncommon. We saw a green version of this that it's a 2/2 that just comes in with 1 counter, and you can remove the counter to give it hexproof, and that did not see standard play like I thought it would. So I think this is definitely like a little stronger than that. Maybe it'll push it into standard play, and I think that'd be cool. So I like this a lot.
Again, there's different ways that they could do this, and this is just one idea. I do agree that they would want to be very careful about just static indestructible. But there are lots of different ways thematically that white can activate an indestructible ability. And we've already saw that discard a card is not that bad a cost to pay to give a creature indestructible or 4 life, over and over again. That's quite.
Yeah, I would certainly rather pay 4 life, but either way.
For sure. But there's lots of ways that we could do this. But for my next card, and I think this is my last one, I do think we'd want to be careful with putting indestructible, just like straight indestructible on creatures, but I think it can be done, and I don't think it would really break any formats or limited formats if probably uncommon, I think. But why don't we have an indestructible Squire? Just it's not really a Squire, it's a 1/1, but yeah, so 2 mana creature, 1/1 indestructible. Do you think that this is too good?
Okay, so in my time of playing, we have gotten 1 uncommon indestructible creature, and it was a 7 mana 4/4 flyer. So not really comparable to this. It was an angel. I honestly feel like this just mostly depends on how good the like transformation and exile removal is in a limited format. We've seen black be able to exile recently.
Yeah.
In pretty much every recent limited format. Forced to sacrifice. Blue can transform something in pretty much every limited format. So like, at the worst, like you're a white player forcing your opponent to like use 2 removal spells on this thing, which card advantage is something hard to come by in white. So I think I think it's designed pretty elegantly. I think Wizards of the Coast would probably go ahead and make this a rare because they're too scared of it. But I think this could be, especially in like maybe a Modern Horizons limited format. This could definitely be printed. Just a 2 mana 1/1 indestructible. Looking at this card got me thinking like, how much would they make us pay mana-wise for just a sorcery that puts an indestructible counter on a creature? And like I like the Studious Squire a lot. I don't know if I would go ahead and put it at uncommon in most limited formats, not because I think it's unfair, but because what new players feel like is unfair is often more important than what actually is unfair. And I can picture some newer person like being in like a Magic Arena Facebook group getting really mad at this card.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that too, and that's where my hesitation would come from. But I think that there's room for this. This could be tweaked, a number of different ways. It would really depend on the format that it's in, but I think there's room for this, and I would be excited to see a limited format that has this as a part of it.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our discussion on white. I think that we all have some really great ideas. And if you, if you're not happy with our ideas, just go on Reddit and look at it. Just search the word white, and you'll come up with tons of different threads of people just talking about different ways that white could be improved. So, like we said.
Be clear, go on the Magic the Gathering subreddit and search up the word white. Do not search up the word white on just Reddit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, yeah, definitely don't do that. Yeah, so lots of people are talking about this. There's lots of ideas out there, and I'd say a lot of good ideas. But these are just our favorites, and we wanted to give some card designs as we do to illustrate them. But I think this is a great discussion. Like all of these, I think would be great ways to go forward with white. So thank you for bringing these great ideas to the forefront on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I think this has been pretty cool. We've been able to share these, but we have a special segment for you at the end of this episode. We've never done this before, but we want to add a little pizzazz to the cast.
Sprinkle a little Parmesan cheese on top.
Yeah, absolutely. Except from the side that's just like a big hole where it all falls out. That's how I do my parm. So yeah, I've taken 6 random cards from Scryfall. Tried not to read them beforehand, and we are just going to review them. Just give our thoughts on these 6 cards, our hot takes, since we are gut shot. So, do you want to take turns reading them?
Oh yeah. Let's do that. And I'll start off with the first one. Okay, we've got. First card, Throne of Mckinney. This is a rare from Battle for Zendikar. You might remember this one. It's a very recent card. Non-basic land, taps to add colorless. 1 in tap, put a charge counter on Throne of Mckinney, and tap, remove a charge counter from Throne of Mckinney. So it's just removing 1 counter. Add 2 mana of any 1 color. Spend this mana only to cast kicked spells. Now, this is a rare card, and there's not really a kicker deck in Standard, right?
Yeah, this card kind of fucking sucks. Scryfall, when I clicked random, gave me the version with the F&M promo stamp on it, so I'm going to complain about those instead.
Right.
When I'm searching a card on TCG Player, those stupid promo stamps make it so there's like 10 different versions of every rare, and I have to find exactly the one I like. But yeah, Throne of Mckinney is not worth paying the mana to put a charge counter on. Don't play it.
Yeah, that makes it really tough. Like, I can see where you're doubling your mana, but it's just too much work for a deck that doesn't even exist. Yeah. Like you wouldn't even, you would only play this in a deck that is like just load to the gills with kicker spells, and that's not how you want to approach it. You just want to play the good kicker spells. You don't want to play the bad ones.
Yeah. On to the next card. I was surprised with how many of these cards I knew, and I certainly know this one. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, 1 and a white for a 2 legendary human soldier with first strike, and non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Speaking of white cards that tax, you know it, you love it from Modern. There's not much else to say about it. Very strong hate bears card. I love this card.
Yeah, this card is great, and I think it's a great example of how legendary can still matter in the actual like normal four of a card type format. Like, you actually have to think about whether you want to play the full 4 Thalia in your deck. You cannot have 2 of these out on the out at the same. This is just a great card. Instant classic. It's always been good since the day it was printed. Classic character. Lots of people like Thalia just from a flavor standpoint. And just we need more cards like this.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool card. We love this one. So you got the next one. I actually haven't heard of this one.
You got Mountain?
Yeah, it was one of the 6 random cards. I'm not going to curate these.
The only basic land that has unequivocally been printed more times than all the others. Everyone knows the Arabian Nights story. Red is, I think, my favorite color. So, Mountain, I'm a big fan.
This is actually one of the Battle for Zendikar non-full art mountains that I feel shouldn't exist.
Okay. I just noticed that. Okay, so actually I have a story. For a while, I was a super hipster about my lands, and I specifically went out and bought the original Zendikar intro decks, specifically for the Zendikar lands that were not full art, so I could play them, just so I could be a little snobby towards the people I was playing against.
That gets my official seal of based. Next, we've got Hidden Stag. I hadn't heard of this one. 1 and a green for an enchantment from Urza's Whirly Wheelies. Whenever one of your opponent plays a land, if Hidden Stag is an enchantment, Hidden Stag becomes a 3/2 creature that counts as a beast. Whenever you play a land, if Hidden Stag is a creature, Hidden Stag becomes an enchantment. So it's no longer a creature. This wording wouldn't fly in Modern Magic. But basically, when your opponent plays a land, this turns into a 3/2. When you play a land, it stops being a 3/2 and just goes back to being an enchantment. I don't understand this. I guess like you're supposed to play lands to protect it from removal, but if they have instant speed removal, they're just going to kill it anyway, and then they're going to like play a land and make it a creature again so they can kill it. This just seems like a weird the long road to a 2-mana 3/2.
It's cool that they play around with the design space, but you never want to be in a position where you have to choose: do I want to continue having a creature on the field, or do I want to play a land? Like, that is not a decision I ever want to have to make.
Did you know about this card before?
No, I've never seen this before.
Okay, this one's weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's also super weird, and you can tell they don't do this much anymore, but like that it's an enchantment that permanently becomes a creature up until a certain point, and it's not until end of turn or anything like that. That's super weird, and I'm sure someone has had a bad time playing against this card because it's a persistent effect that's easy to forget about.
So you've got the next one.
Oh, could you imagine playing a game and like both you and your opponent have missed multiple triggers of this, and you don't know whether it's supposed to be a creature or a land because it's been multiple turns?
Well, I think you can. No, you don't get to choose. Yeah, that sounds hellish.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. All right, let's move on. Homeward Path. Okay, so this is I believe a commander specific card. Is printed in one of those precon decks. Homeward Path, non-basic land, tap to add colorless, and tap each player gains control of all creatures he or she owns. I don't play enough Commander to feel like I can really comment on this, but I know that people play decks where they specifically, the whole point is to like change ownership of cards. They like give bad cards to your opponent or take your their best stuff. For this just tap seems like a good safety valve for that kind of stuff.
There's one of those Commander Planeswalkers, Amanatu, who has everybody just pass all their non-land permanents to the player to the left of them. And then you just tap Homeward Path and you get yours back.
Okay.
Never mind. I guess it just gives everything back to everyone. Yeah, I think you just play this to stop people from doing stuff like that in Commander. I don't think this sees any like legacy play or anything.
No. Although I have to say, I do like that this card exists because I'm not going to sit there and try to learn what every single card that my opponent gives me does. I don't even know what my own cards do. I don't have time to read those. So yeah, I'm going to put this in all my Commander decks. That way I have to read as few cards as possible.
I do not want this Liliana's Pact or whatever.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah. So we've got our last 1 minute card review. Triskelivis, 7-mana artifact creature construct, 1/1 flying. Enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it. Pay 1, remove a +1/+1 counter from Triskelivis. Put a 1/1 colorless Triskelivite artifact creature juggling flying on the battlefield. It has sacrifice this creature. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player. A lot of text on this card. Basically, it makes you can pay 1 and remove the counters from it to make 1/1 flyers that can shoot themselves at stuff to ping that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this card sees a little bit of Commander play in decks that can like add more counters to it. It's neat. It's one of those. It's all of the Trisket. One of those Trisket cards that makes more Triskets, and then you can do stuff with the Triskets. There's one that does stuff with Micaius the Unhallowed. That's the good Trisket. This is one of the other Triskets. How do you feel about this Trisket, Will?
Yeah. So like those cards are thematically linked, but I don't think they play the same way. I think that this is linked to another card from Mirrodin, Pentavis. It was kind of like an updated version of this. However, this was broken in the past. I think that card fixed and changed it from 7 to 5 because it's only 5. So I like this card because it's very cool. It's almost like a example of early top-down design, and it's skill testing. You really have to kind of think about the optimal way to play this card. So yeah, this is an interesting card. Probably doesn't really fit in any formats these days. But I'm sure it's a good cube card. I'm sure that you could build a cube where this is like the best card in a certain archetype, and then you also have to be a really good player to win with this card. It's a really interesting and cool design once you think about it from a top-down perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is an interesting card. Definitely more interesting than Throne of Mckinney. We got a lot of rares this week. I'm not sure why that is, but I'm excited to do this segment, make this segment a regular thing if you want to.
I have to say that was really exciting. I got really into it, and yeah, especially with those like weird older cards, we have a lot to say. So yeah, I totally want to do this again.
Okay, yeah. So with that in mind, you want to sew this one shut?
Yeah, let's button this one up. Why don't you take us out?
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gutshot. You can follow me at FredAss_B on Twitter or at WarCrimesOoWoo on Twitch. Will is at Aggro Rhetoric in both locations. And you can follow the show on Twitter at GutshotPod.
That's right. This has been Gutshot, the only MTG podcast able to draw cards in white, as we've harped on all this episode. And we will see you next time.
Goodbye.